Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Figure Pro. Today's guest is Meg Sylvester-Cielen. Meg, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And you said the last name really well, which is nice.
I practiced a million times.
No one says it right. I remember when we competed a few times, even one of the production team from the UK, the guy that owns almost the IFBB here, he says my name wrong every time. And I've told him 15 times. I think he does it to annoy me.
Probably.
Even Sylvester gets said wrong. Sylvestri.
Oh, that's a new one. I don't think.
I know, especially since Sylvester-Cielen, like obviously he's very famous and it's spelled exactly the same. So
people need to get with it. Yeah.
Here's what it is.
Well, we like to start this off with the most infamous question. Who is your favorite bodybuilder of all time?
So my favorite bodybuilder of all time, it isn't probably a world famous bodybuilder, but is someone that I aspire to be like. And that's Corinne Ingram from the UK, obviously co-owner with Jordan Peters of Trained by JP. And I guess it's not even from a bodybuilding perspective, but how she is mentally that I can resonate with quite well. Coming from my background, coming from her background, which are very similar. How she approaches her day to day with almost a militant mindset and approach. Is probably she's been one of my most inspirational, could you say, people within my journey, because she used to share a lot around, well, her and Jordan used to share a lot around her journey, and I loved that. And I love the fact that she trained very hard and very heavy. I think for me, it's hard to connect with most of the competitors apart from on a physique perspective. And for me, something like that doesn't really give me motivation, doesn't really give me inspiration. I think it's fantastic for someone to look fantastic, but unless you know the backstory, for me, I don't really get that true connection. I think it's incredible. I think it's amazing. A lot of hard work must have gone into it, but not many people share it and aren't very open about it. And obviously, I'm not very close with them. Corinne is the type of person that I could ask questions to, and I just have that connection with her and how she makes me feel towards either my day-to-day or my bodybuilding.
That's awesome. At what age did you start lifting weights and why?
So I was a diver, so diving prior to being a bodybuilder. So I can't really lie and say that I started lifting weights when I became a bodybuilder, because we were doing almost strength and conditioning when I was diving prior to that. So obviously I was very young. I was like 8 years old when I first probably did a squat with a barbell on my back. But in terms of like real training, 2016 was when I started bodybuilding, and then like actually training effectively probably around 2.5 years ago.
What made you switch from diving to bodybuilding?
I was just knackered. I'd been doing it since I was 8, and I was 22 at the time, and I gotten injured quite a few times in my shoulder, and it was repetitive the amount of times that I was just getting injuries in that shoulder. And because I did 10 meter, not 3 meter, which is the springboard, it was really obviously a lot of impact on my shoulder at all times. So I could have obviously chosen to go down the route of coming away from 10 meters and going through to 3 meter, but I was never going to be very good because I'm not very heavy. So that's why I chose to come away from it and just go to the gym. And then my best friend, Ria Gale, who's also an IFBB Figure Pro, we've been friends since we were like 12. She had started bodybuilding, and then I started getting into the mix. And the guy that was coaching her told me to give it a good go.
Wow. Well, I'd like to go a little bit back and start from your younger years. I want to know what were they like? What were your influences from your parents, or any kind of coaches or mentors from your very young years? If anything stands out, please share with us.
So my mum and dad are influential, not in the aspect of sportsmanship, because neither of them did sports. My brother was a diver. That's pretty much why I got into diving. So there's not like a massive fairy tale as to why I ended up doing that. But they were very influential people on me for their day-to-day habits of creating good routines and how that really helps with having a stress-free life, having kind of the ability to be happy with a simple life. And I think that lots of people try to chase. I apologize for the dogs. Kuba's just come home from the gym. So I'm hoping that they will stop, but we'll see. So yeah, my most influential people when I was obviously growing up were my parents. Just from that, they have a routine, they stick to it, they're happy living a simple life, which I think allows me to be able to do something like bodybuilding and be okay with it, because it's not very flashy. It's not very, there's not a lot of extravagance that comes with being a bodybuilder. It is a very simple life, and I think that kind of little things make you happy, and little wins with your day to day. And they've been very much those types of people all their life. It's like even now, if I'll go to their house, I know what time they're going to go to bed. I know what time they're going to wake up. I know what time they're going to have tea, which is dinner for you guys if we're in the States. I know what time they're going to be at work, etc., etc. And I think that's solidified how my mindset is day to day. And I think why I fell quite easily into being an athlete. And to me, they're the most influential and amazing people. And I think that they definitely, a lot of their kind of mindset, thoughts around things have definitely been instilled within me as a child. And that's how it's allowed me to be as an adult, or kind of someone that's grown up in the world. And then the other person that was very influential when I was very little, and this is very sports related, was my first coach, my first diving coach, Adam Southern. He was my coach all the way through to me still being kind of 10 years into the sport. And it wasn't until the last few years when I went to university and moved away from home that then I wasn't coached by him, but also someone else that was an incredible coach as well, that I have so much kind of time for and still have lots of contact with both of those two people. But my first coach was the person who allowed me to have the mindset of taking no shit.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way that I can put it. Not that I took a lot of shit from him, and I think that that's made me a very resilient person. I can take a lot of negativities, bad vibes, whatever you want to call it, and not be fazed by it. And I think that he's the person that taught me that. He's also the person that taught me how to work hard and what it meant to work hard, and what it takes for someone to give you praise for working hard. Not that you should try and earn praise from someone, but what kind of true praise and feel good should feel like, and how much effort you should put into something to be able to achieve success. And I think that he was the one that instilled that within me when I was little as well. I'm sorry, I'm rambling too much.
No, you are totally fine. And this is kind of how it goes. You know, I just ask a question and I just let you take the floor. So this is awesome. When you're talking about your coach, do you think that there are two types of coaching, and is one more productive or proactive than the other? Like with your coach, was he more stern on you intentionally to kind of maybe like help you form a hard shell, or you know what I mean? Is one aspect of a coach better
You're
than
trying
the
to be
other?
nice. Just in case Meg is that other type of coach when she's coaching, let's be nice. No, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think there's a type of coach that would, in the UK, we'd call it mollycoddling. I don't know if that's a term in the US, but that basically means being wrapped in cotton wool, making everything sunshine and rainbows, lots of blowing smoke. And then there's the other end of the spectrum that I think that there's some people that can be too extreme, some people that have a mixed bag of both, and I think a mixed bag of both has to be there to a certain extent. And then the other one's a little bit more stern. Adam was definitely very stern. He would definitely try to make us cry. And he didn't think 2 seconds about it at all, even though my mum was sometimes shouting at him to say, you need to be a little bit nicer. When he had children, his kind of outlook was very different.
Mm.
His approach was very different, and it was actually very nice. I think that if he would have been like that when we were younger, I think quite a few more young divers that were probably very could have been very good. I
Mm.
think would have probably stuck around for a little bit longer. But I think that he made them lose the love for it a little
Mm.
from how stern he was. But no, yeah, he was definitely very stern. He definitely meant to be that way as well. But I'm so grateful for it. I think that if anybody didn't follow it through and didn't see it through and whatnot, I think that they'd probably be very different people
Mm.
if they would have. And I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I do think that he was definitely like that. Like myself as a coach, I'm very honest with my athletes. I will tell them if something's terrible, but if something's actually very good, praise will be given as well. So I think that you do have to have both ends of the spectrum, but I don't think that you can be too pro one or pro the other without a little bit of mix in the middle, because otherwise you become almost unapproachable from one aspect
Yeah.
and then too approachable from the other aspect. And I think you've got to have a nice balance, which is what I definitely had with him. He almost felt like a second dad,
Mm.
but also I knew the boundaries of him not being my family.
Right, right.
That made sense.
Well, hold that thought. I do have a question about your coaching, but I'm going to save it for a little bit down the line. I do want to talk about your teenage years, years maybe if you went to college, talk about that. If not, just the younger adult years, and then when was your first bodybuilding show?
So my younger adult years, so kind of adolescent wise, I was still diving. So I didn't really have much of a social life. I wasn't a complete recluse at school. I did have a lot of friends. I did do kind of normal person things like going to the cinema, going ice skating, things like that that you used to do with friends. But it was definitely a lot more limited compared to the other people that I was in my year group with at school. So I was doing that. I didn't really go to school a lot. I think it was 2 or 3 times a week. I actually went to school. This is kind of in the US. It would be high school, and it's called senior school in the UK. So I literally did a couple of days a week at school. The rest of it was long distance learning. We called it here just because of the way in which kind of training fell with diving, going abroad with competitions. Because I was on uh, the diving squad for the country from the age of 8, so it was kind of non-stop really with competitions, Europeans, worlds, etc. And then that actually still progressed into my college years, or as we call it in the UK, kind of university years. And I was still diving at the time. It wasn't until my last year at university that then I decided to come away from competitive diving. So my life, I guess you could call it restrictive in the sense that I didn't go on things like girls' holidays, didn't really go out drinking a whole lot. Not that I didn't drink, but it was kind of a couple of weeks in a year that we had time to do that when we had off time from diving. And that's kind of how my young years were. And then I had the year where I was still at university and came away from competitive diving when I started going to the gym. I wasn't competing at the time. I wasn't thinking about that, but I was definitely going to the gym, but a little bit more of a cardio bunny, trying to get as skinny as possible for some unknown reason. Um, and then I found bodybuilding, and that was 2016 when I stepped foot in the gym as someone that had just stepped away from diving. So that was the February, and I actually competed in the September of 2016. And I only did a 12-week prep. I would not recommend anyone coming into bodybuilding the way that I did, but that's how I did it.
That's funny. you said that you first started off just doing a ton of cardio and trying to be as skinny as possible. When did that mindset like switch? Because obviously in bodybuilding, we have to grow, we have to put on weight in the off season. Talk about the mindset, and especially as a female, it's hard, personally speaking, it's hard to, get your head around, I'm going to gain weight and this is intentional. If you can just talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Yeah. So when I first started, obviously I was doing bikini, and at the time it wasn't a class that had a lot of muscle mass. Not that they didn't have a lot of muscle mass at the top, but definitely the amateur shows and kind of my knowledge around off seasons and preps was very skewed.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that it wasn't probably until I met Kuba that my mindset towards that was very different. And it wasn't because of me not wanting to grow or not wanting to do an off season properly, but just because I didn't have an understanding of what that meant. So when I first started going into the gym, and to be honest, it was just before that, before February, that I tried to do lots of cardio, more so from running outside, not from going into a gym. And then when the February hit and I started going to the gym and lifting weights, I was still doing a lot of cardio because I'd pretty much gone straight from doing that into a prep. Mm. And I think I looked terrible at my first show. I definitely did more of an off season after that, leading into my 2017 season, where I had met Kuba at this time, but we definitely weren't in a relationship. We were just friends at the time. And I definitely did an off season, but I was going out on the weekend. I'd just come away basically from competitive diving, and I'd been given free reins. I literally had a whole year at university where I went absolutely nuts, going out at least 3, 4 times a week, doing every god renowned substance that you could possibly think of before obviously then reining myself back in because I'd never done that. So definitely throughout my 2016 to 2017 off season, I was still kind of just, I didn't really understand bodybuilding. I was definitely eating a lot of rubbish food, getting way too heavy in my off season, not really taking it that seriously, still training hard, but not like doing real solid push phases, pull back phases, etc., like we do now, where it's a little bit more meticulous, where we actually make progress. It was kind of just, I got really fat, stayed really fat for quite some time, and then prepped. And definitely didn't start prep in the most ideal position, didn't really have base food very high. So it was kind of just taking away the off plans that then put me into a deficit. And it was just a bit of a shit show, really. But my 2017 season was really long. I competed in the May and qualified for the Arnold Classics Europe amateurs later in the year. So I did that and the British finals, but it was like 10, 11 months on prep. So it was pretty heavy. And again, I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that. And then towards the back end of that year is when I met Kuba, and then things started to become a little bit more serious with the off seasons because I started to understand what it was. And I've never really been a person that's too bothered about weight, really. When I was younger, I think it was more when I finished diving that then I was like, oh, I need to focus on having a good body because I've not got something that's going to make me have a good body anymore. And I think that's where the obsession with becoming really skinny came about. And I don't know why, because I always had a big appetite. So I think I was destined to be a bodybuilder because I love to eat food. I don't really ever get ridiculously full. I don't mind putting on weight. So yeah, I think lots of people do struggle with it, and I do understand. And I think it's more the face. Like when you're eating a lot of clean foods, as much as your body still looks quite lean, your face gets so fat. It's like my cheeks are so big, my head feels so large. And I think that that's the bit that I don't really like. I think if my body could stay like this and my face stay a little bit skinnier, it would be okay. Yeah. But that's bodybuilding, unfortunately, especially
Right.
off season.
Right. Well, the next question I would love to ask you is post high school years. We've talked about that. So let's talk about, how many shows did you do before you started placing? Or did you place in your first show?
No, I did one show and I came last. I think I came last. I'm not sure. I
Okay.
don't really know what was going on. I
Right.
definitely got last call outs. I was just having a great time. I was really proud of what I looked like. I loved my bikini, but yeah, definitely came either last or second to last. And then my second show came first.
Did you switch divisions or did you stay in
No,
bikini? No.
I was
Okay.
gutted. So no, actually, I tell a lie. I'd wanted to stay in bikini at that time. I didn't really know much about other classes at that point. And then after my 2017 season, when I switched coaches, I broached the subject of doing figure because I have or had good quads. My kind of frame from the front looked really nice in a figure front relaxed, and the coach told me not to. That I was definitely destined to be a good bikini athlete, and he wasn't wrong. Like I was able to obviously win my pro card in that class, but my love doesn't fit there. I think that bikini athletes are incredible. I think that they have the most beautiful physiques, beautiful structures. I think they obviously try very hard to achieve the look that they do. Anybody that does bodybuilding does. But for me, my love definitely resonates with really hard training. And when I train really hard, I definitely not look like a bikini girl, unfortunately, because I'm just not that way genetically inclined.
Mhm. What coach were you with when you decided to transfer into figure?
He was called Rob Witt. He's called Team LRF in the UK. He was the guy who told me not to move to figure.
Okay.
So I was with him as a bikini athlete. I didn't actually ever compete under him. I did just an off season under him. And then I actually made the move to figure when I was with Kuba.
Okay. Okay.
So I won my pro card under Kuba. He did my entire prep of 2018. I was his first pro card winner. And then we I'd had a few conversations around it. He'd made me hit kind of the figure poses when I was doing my bikini prep quite often, and we both got quite excited about the way in which I looked with that. Jordan Peters also was like, "Yeah, definitely go for it." So, kind of having Kuba's support and then someone that we both obviously have a lot of respect for in the industry saying to go for it, that's when I decided to go for it.
What was it like when you won your pro card? Can you just describe the experience? You remember the show or just leading up to the show? What was that like for you?
I honestly I didn't expect to win my pro card that year at all.
Mm.
I actually had a really bad car accident in 2018 at the start, which is why I actually came away from my coach because my coach at the time because well there was no point in him really being my coach because I couldn't do anything. I completely shattered my foot, so they had to put a plate into my foot, allow for my bone to regrow. So I actually wasn't allowed to walk for like 12 weeks, I think it was.
Oh
And then
my.
I was able to obviously get back into doing some light things. So that was the start of 2018. That's when Kuba first ever took me to the cinema because I was a little lonely dragon sat in my bedroom at home. So he actually took me to the cinema. So I definitely didn't expect to win a pro card that year. It wasn't something that I was not that I wasn't striving. I was always striving to be the best version of myself. And I competed against some really great competitors that day. A lady who actually won her pro card a couple of weeks later and then went on to actually at that show qualify for the Olympia that year. So the standard of competition that I was in the day that I won my pro card was pretty heavy. I remember standing backstage looking at all these because it was in Spain that I won my pro card. So there was lots of Latino ladies with big bums. And I was like, what am I doing here?
Don't belong.
Yeah, I was like, what am I doing here? Because I definitely don't look like these girls.
Yeah.
But my physique obviously looked really great on stage. I was nicely conditioned, had lovely shape for bikini, got some really lovely feedback from the head judge. And I actually do think that I could have done quite well within that class, given my shape and I work hard and have like the knowledge of Kubo to be able to apply my training in a way that I could have grown for that class. But for me, I just wouldn't have enjoyed it.
Mm.
Yeah, the day was amazing. I had a lot of pressure on me because Kuba got his pro card the day before.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, oh, this is gonna be, I'm gonna have to try and win it now then.
And you did it, so that's
um,
good.
yeah, and there was definitely lots of emotions, happiness, kind of worry of, oh, have I got my pro card too early, etc.
Mm.
But I think that I I didn't get it too early for the class that I was in, but I definitely got it too early for the class that I wanted to do, if that made sense.
Right. So how much time did you take from getting your pro card to the next show of off
So it's
season?
actually 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. I was really small on stage. I was like 45 kilos, I think. I was on stage when I won my bikini class. Um, and then 2020 was the year that I did my figure debut. It's not even figure pro debut, it's just figure debut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I looked like a figure competitor, but I was very small. I managed to achieve second call outs in a really heavily stacked show the first time around. And then my placings kind of got worse after that, even though I got a little bit bigger. um, but I probably should have just taken the next year off and not competed. And then this year's obviously the first year that I've had a little bit of success within that, obviously achieving first call outs in both the shows that I did.
How did you deal with that mentally, placing lower, or I guess the number would be higher than your previous contest, but knowing that you improved yourself from the last time you're on stage? How did you deal with that?
That's the devil of bodybuilding. Unfortunately, your best or your improved version could be worse than everybody else's improved version. So as much as you try to kind of improve yourself, other people can either improve better or just look better, or there might be different competitors that look even greater and are just further afield within their journey at that time. And you've got to be okay with that. It's not really a case of what do I do to be okay with it? It's just I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I am just on that journey for me, and I'm striving to get better for me. And at that time, I just wasn't good enough. And that's okay, because eventually I'll get to a point where I am good enough.
Mm. That's awesome. I love that. And I'd like to dive into a few questions that I had
Yeah,
for
of
you.
course.
So can you talk a little bit more about the recovery period? So now you are a coach, you have Team MK. Maybe we talk about that first. Just tell me about Team MK. What are you and Kuba doing? What's your coaching styles? Give me a little bit more information on that, and we go from there.
So obviously Kuba's been coaching for a really long time. He's someone that I've obviously gotten my base of knowledge and most of my knowledge from. Obviously, I have a great amount of respect for him, given the fact that he was the coach that helped me achieve pro status, helped me achieve the progress that I've been able to make over the past kind of 5 years whilst being under him, as well as obviously being his partner as well. So obviously he's been coaching himself for a very long time. I decided in 2020 that I wanted to become an online coach because I felt like that's where my passion lied. When I was kind of doing my university studies, I actually trained to be a teacher. I was a teacher for some time, but teaching just wasn't for me. But all of those things that I've learned through education, I now apply within my coaching. And I feel like that's something that I was definitely probably put on this earth to do, if that doesn't sound too cringy. So we decided at the back end of, I think it was 2021, that we'd merge it together, just because it seemed a little bit strange to not have it together, because we basically did everything together anyway. Um, so that's why we decided to form it together. Obviously, our base of coaching is hard and heavy training, progressive overload style training, definitely a little bit more old school bodybuilding in the sense of, I don't know, spit and sawdust style training, if you could say. but then also with probably a new school twist of not just having chicken and broccoli for every single meal, having a little bit more of a variety, etc. And we like to educate. We love to give the reason why we're doing certain things, and I think that that's something that was missed when I was first starting competing. And not that I have anything against anybody that I ever got coached by, but I wish that there would have been more of an education for me to be able to understand all parts of the journey, when I should buy a bikini for my show, what class is going to be better for me, what style of training is going to be better for me because of my biomechanics, and why is that I don't like certain foods, so I can have all these other different foods, and this is why it still works because of the macros that obviously sit within those types of foods, etc. And I just wish that there was more of that education when I was younger, and that's what we've tried to do with our business.
That's awesome. Okay, so I read on one of your Instagram posts, you're talking about the importance of recovery and, post show getting back into the health phase. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What do you like to do for that? What is your protocol?
So in terms of my protocol for different people
Mm.
is obviously very different. There's an element of needing to reverse from a show for everybody. Obviously, some people will be in serious condition where the reverse is to literally get them back to serious homeostasis and making sure that they're actually in a healthy functioning position, especially as a female. Getting the kind of female monthly cycles probably usually a good telltale sign that things are in a better place. But obviously blood work will obviously show up anything that's outlying, and obviously it's something that you do need to get done throughout your year to make sure that things are still in a very healthy spot. But post a contest prep, around 10 to 12 weeks per show is definitely a good time to get them done. I think sometimes when you get them done a little bit prematurely, it doesn't really give a true kind of idea as to where things are. You definitely do need to go through a recovery process prior to getting them done, just to see if there's anything then that is again an outlier that you obviously need to approach, that isn't just to do with you reversing from a competition prep. So there's that end of the spectrum, especially if someone is really very lean. When you have someone that obviously isn't very lean, and that's not me being nasty. Obviously from a kind of natural bodybuilding perspective of something like bikini, figure, etc. I'm not talking kind of physique or into women's bodybuilding, because they obviously are in the same boat as most of the classes, but they're not really in a position where they're ridiculously that lean that they may not have really lost their menstrual cycle, etc. But in terms of reversing from the contest prep, you still need to do that in the sense of taking it very steady, having really great communication, having quite regular communication, just to make sure from a kind of food relationship perspective that obviously someone's in a very good place to then obviously kickstart their off season. Because I think until you get to a point where mentally you're in a very good place with food, obviously not wanting to go away from plan, obviously off plan eating's in a good spot and you're feeling positive towards that. Then alongside obviously the people that were very lean and they're back into a really great place from a female menstrual cycle perspective, blood work's back into a really great place, you've got an element of body fat back onto the body, you can then start to think about doing an off season. You can't go from a contest prep and then straight away going into full blown off season training volume and expect it not to bite you on the bum from a recovery kind of training perspective. You can't expect to be eating kind of 1,000 calories and then going straight up to 4,000 calories and not expect to balloon up. You have to do a slow, steady kind of reverse out from it. I mean, it's not something that's new. It's not something that's confusing or people trying to go a little bit too deep into it. It's literally just common sense, really. If you've done a contest prep, you need to be slowly bringing yourself out of that contest prep into kind of normal, whether that be you're still continuing to be a bodybuilder or not, before you obviously go into an off season if you are going to compete again. Otherwise, you're just going to end up being knackered or too fat.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the coaching client relationship as far as being 100% like honest in your feedback and your check-ins with your coach? Um, Maybe providing them context with maybe something that you're struggling with that week. What are your thoughts on that? And what is the best approach to take as a from a coaching perspective with your clients?
I think that you have to have a fine line as a coach athlete between coach athlete and friendship. I think from my background of what I've done from a teaching perspective, I think it allows me to be able to solidify my relationship and the boundaries that I have with my clients from the get-go. I think that lots of coaches or some coaches do struggle with that boundary and tend to go a little bit too far into being a friend. And
Mhm.
I don't think that that works quite often, especially if kind of hard conversations need to be had. I think that you do have to have that boundary. When it comes to being, I've lost my train of thought.
That's
I'm
okay.
what
That's
was
okay. The
the
second
question?
question I was talking about was what is the importance of providing context when you're
Yeah,
struggling with something as a client,
yeah,
telling your
that was it.
coach?
That was it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important as an athlete that you have to be really honest with your coach at all times because that's the only way that anything can get fixed. If you've fucked up and you've come away from your diet or you've not done something that you were supposed to, etc. And then you go into your check and you're like, yeah, I had a great week,
Mm,
100% adherence, etc. But you've gained 5 kilos or you've lost 5 kilos or you look really flat on your pictures or you look like you've gained a lot of weight on your pictures, you look very watery, etc. Obviously, there's definitely different elements that come into that, especially as a female monthly cycle, etc., that should be obviously tracked quite closely with a coach anyway. But I think being honest and from both sides of the spectrum, I think that's the only way that you can create an actual working good relationship with your athlete or with your coach, because if you're not being honest with your athlete, again it comes down to that conversation that we had at the start where you're just blowing smoke really.
mhm,
And I think that I was definitely subject to being someone a little bit like that when I first started coaching, and that I was like, oh, I don't want to lose these people as clients, but actually they appreciate someone being honest with them to actually get them where they want to be, rather
mhm,
than someone obviously stroking their back and telling them that they're absolutely amazing. So I think that that's something that you have to do. You have to tell them, and I think that it can obviously be done in a check-in. But if there's something that's happened and you have a way of having communication with your coach away from a check-in, I think if something's happened and it's probably going to be better if you can approach that subject now, probably making contact with them before that just to make sure that you can tell them and
mhm,
work through it. And I think that if you're a great coach and one of the athletes is having a problem, I think that you definitely are the person that, to obviously a coaching extent of it still being relatable to bodybuilding,
mm,
I think that they're the ones that are definitely people that should be able to problem solve a little. There's definitely more. I think sometimes clients don't think for themselves sometimes, and probably there is an element of common sense that could probably create the problem to be a little bit better for them without them needing to reach out to their coach. But I think the further they get down their coaching journey and the more the coach is honest with that, just saying, obviously this is something that could be done, you know, that that's obviously common sense. Obviously in the future, if you know that, you can obviously approach that situation a little bit better yourself. But I think that it just comes with communication. Communication is key to all relationships, and that comes with the good and the bad. So if there's something that's going wrong, tell your coach and be honest with that. And if it's something to do with the way in which they're coaching or the food that you're on or something, don't feel like you're being an annoyance because it's something that obviously you don't enjoy, you don't like, etc. And sometimes coaching relationships can't work because two people are very different, or there is a way in which most people can obviously get around working in certain aspects and it's still working. And that's how a coaching and an athlete's relationship flourishes.
mm. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people that are new to bodybuilding doing these days? or just new lifestyle clients as well? Like, what are some things that people can take away as far as like creating better habits or, redirecting their thoughts?
Yeah. I think I'm still very new to bodybuilding, so sometimes I feel like I can't have an opinion because I'm still very new. But obviously, I am 6, 7 years down the line and been an athlete all of my life. I think if you're a lifestyle based bodybuilder, don't expect your progress to be like a competitive bodybuilder unless you're someone that's super genetic elite, because your approach is definitely much more relaxed compared to a competitive bodybuilder, and that's obviously not a negative thing. And then again, on the other end of the spectrum, there are some lifestyle clients that do approach it like they are a competitive bodybuilder. In that sense, definitely expect your results to be as good as a competitive bodybuilder if you are putting in the work. But consistency is the bare necessity to which you will be able to base your bodybuilding journey upon. If you can be consistent at eating your meals, not being an idiot when it comes to off-plan eating, train hard, kind of recover really well, because rest is also very important with bodybuilding, then you'll do very well. If you're not consistent and you're going out all the time drinking, eating lots of things that are heavily kind of calorific, like meat sub sliders or whatever they are, the big kind of cheesy fries all the time, don't expect your look and things to progress in the way of someone who is eating a lot of food but eating a lot of good food, and someone who is doing all the training and not kind of half-arsing their training, and someone that still sticks to all of their steps even if it's raining outside, and doing all of their cardio even though they don't want to get on their bike in a morning, and someone who is meal prepping from great sources of food rather than something that's really cheap and easy to buy and quick to make in the microwave, etc. Because all of those things do count, and consistency with greatness will allow you to be able to achieve good things.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. I'd like to know, what are your next steps as far as your own journey? What are your next goals? What are you aspiring to do in the next few years or so?
Well, obviously the main overall little goal there is to qualify for the Olympia. Look, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'll give everything and then some more to every part of my journey to try and make sure that that can happen. But it's a very prestigious show. Obviously, they've changed their rulings again on the way in which you can qualify, making it much more prestigious yet again, which is, I think, a very positive thing for the sport. And if I am able to obviously go and stand on that stage, incredible. If not, I will give everything that I can. So that is the overarching goal. The kind of intermediate and kind of short-term goals that we break down to be able to achieve that is obviously I was going to speak about kind of the weight, but I will say one thing: don't try to chase weight, because if weight doesn't look good, it doesn't matter. It kind of only matters what looks great from a physique perspective. So yes, more mass to some degree is very important, but not to the point that it looks terrible. So always make sure that there is someone in your corner to tell you whether you look terrible or whether you look fantastic. But yeah, the kind of short-term goal is this year will be an off-season year. Because I do still need to put a lot of density onto my physique, because I've definitely grown a lot, but kind of the muscle maturity and density within my physique isn't there. And that kind of shows when I was stood on stage with the other ladies that I was stood on stage with, the way in which the condition that I can get in compared to other people that have got much more dense, mature muscle is obviously very different, which then sometimes makes me fade a little when we're worked in posing. So the goal is to get denser, to solidify my look, definitely put a little bit more tissue through the back of my physique again, which is definitely something that is needed. And I'll step on stage in kind of April, May of 2024, to hopefully try and qualify for the Olympia of 2024.
Oh, awesome. I'm excited to just watch your journey and see you along the way. And like I said before we hit record, like the content that you're putting out is just incredible. And I hope that you guys continue to do it. You and Kuba both are so knowledgeable and have so much good information to share. So I appreciate that. I do want to just ask a few more fun questions to close it out,
Yeah.
and then we'll be all set to go. So what is your biggest gym pet peeve?
Oh, so there's two. Can I do two?
Of course.
I mean, I don't know what yours are, but mine are definitely people who make noise for no apparent reason.
Mhm.
I think sometimes if you're making a noise, that's taken away from your set. Be quiet. Because I think that kind of energy that you're using to shout with, you could probably use it to do an extra 4 reps. So that's definitely one of them. And then another one is people that don't put their weights away. I hate it.
That's the number one. Everyone hates that. I don't
Yeah.
understand why we haven't adapted it yet. Like if ever it bugs everyone, just put your damn weights away and we're fine.
Yeah, no. I think in any other thing that you do in the world, you would definitely be expected to tidy after yourself.
It's like
So
a
why?
kid. Like a kid takes your toys out, put your toys away.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And definitely for the staff members that we have at our gym, they're not on the floor gym members really. They're staff that work, or they should just be staff that work behind the reception, giving front of house kind of feel good vibes to people to want to come back again. They shouldn't have to be putting 500 million weights away at the end of kind of their shifts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. This one I thought was kind of fun. I don't know about you, but I've made some weird meals in my past just to like try to get the macros right. Is there anything that like sticks out to you that you've eaten that's just like absurdly like gross and you've done it just to get the macros in?
I think the meals that normal people find very strange are probably show day meals. So things like when you put in honey and peanut butter on just normal rice.
Yeah.
I think that that's what people thinks very strange. In terms of kind of mashed up meals, no. I
Okay.
mean, maybe I'm just really boring, and maybe I need to be a little bit more kind of forward thinking with things. But I don't think that I've ever tried to throw things together to try and match up my macros, but maybe maybe I have, and I just can't think about it right now. But yeah, definitely, I love things, everything with peanut butter.
Mm.
I think I could dip fries in peanut butter or dark chocolate. I think that I could eat dark chocolate and fries and chips and kind of all carbohydrates with those things mixed together at any time. So maybe
What?
I am a little bit strange.
Well, I agree with you. So maybe we're both strange. All right. Well, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? I know this is a tough one.
It's very tough.
Mm-hmm.
You should have asked me this question definitely before, because I could probably
Think
have
about it.
actually thought of some, because there's so many valuable like little
Mm.
slogans or terms that people use. And I think that Kuba's definitely one that has lots of like little 3-word kind of sentences that kind of stick with me, etc. But when you put on the spot, you can't think of them.
Is there anyone in particular as of lately that maybe you have been like telling yourself as a mantra?
Just keep on going. I think that that's what I've felt like since I stepped off stage in 2020, when obviously that was my first little point of being a figure athlete. It was just the mindset of you've just got to keep on going.
Mm.
If you keep on going and keep on being consistent and hardworking, success has got to follow. And that definitely is like a little slogan. I remember when I was diving and we used to have these meetings when we were like 8, 9 years old. And at the time things used to go over your head. But like there's certain things that stick out. And there was definitely a guy that was there that said it was something about being hardworking and then success following. But I need to remember what the actual slogan was because it was fantastic. And they actually used it as something pretty similar for the Olympics. One year was like, they have slogans for each country, don't they?
Yeah.
And they had it something similar for an Olympics one year. And it definitely, yeah, but I can't remember what it is. It was something like that.
Well, if
So
you
some,
do remember it, then just post it on your Instagram and tell everyone to read your caption.
yeah.
All right. Well, we will wrap it up here. Are there any final thoughts or words that you'd like to leave us with the listeners?
No, but I want to say thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And if anybody's actually listened to me ramble on at this point, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, like I said, you are my first person to interview on this show, and it couldn't have been more of a pleasure for
I
me.
feel
This
honored.
opportunity has been awesome. Would you like to talk about any like sponsors or anything like that, your gym before we go?
Yes, so obviously in the States now, there is TBJP, which is trained by JP Nutrition and clothing that you can obviously access. My code MEG10 will work in the US. So if you do want to use that, then please do. And then if you are ever in the UK, please do come and find Ultraflex Rotherham. It is the best of the Ultraflexes. It is definitely the best gym in the UK. I'm yet to have gone to a gym in any other country. That's as good as it in terms of atmosphere and equipment. So if you ever are in the land of the UK, please hit that up. And then also for anything in terms of gym equipment, knee sleeves, gym wraps, etc., follow Hard Body gym equipment as well because they're fantastic.
Awesome. What is your Instagram handle in case anyone wants to reach out for coaching inquiries?
I think it's at Meg Sylvester-Cielen.
Just simple, your name.
Yeah, I
I'm sure people
I
will be
think
able to find you.
that's
All right. Well, thank you again, Meg. We really appreciate it and your time and all the energy that you put into this today. I want to say thank you for listening to all of our listeners. Please subscribe to the podcast, leave a written comment or review, and definitely share this episode with anyone that is interested in bodybuilding or just wants someone who is inspirational like Meg herself to share some insight. And of course, remember behind the muscle, there's always a story. Thank you.
Thank you.